Hey folks, welcome to Airtime Paintball, where people come to find all the information they need to get good deals on paintball stuff. Today, we're going to take a look at the AMP Shocker. Okay, the AMP Shocker, new gun from Shocker Paintball. This came out just in a nick of time for World Cup, and plenty of folks shot it there, and mostly got great reviews. There were a few teething problems. In fact, my good friend Simon loaned me his that he bought in time to play at World Cup, and I played with it actually for part of a day when he got back, and it was fine. And I got it home. He loaned it to me to do a video. When I got it home, it had some issues. It had an eye fault that wouldn't go away that ended up requiring a board to be replaced, and it also had a problem in the bolt where it had a very harsh sound to it, even though it shot okay. And in any case, I did send it back to Shocker Paintball, and they took care of it in short order, and he's had it since, and it's worked fine. This is actually a different one, and I want to point out my good friend Paul at Matrix Paintball Gear.com was nice enough to ship me this and this XLS both so that we could take a look at these together and get some information. If you are looking for a place that is not Craigslist or eBay or the Facebook groups where you're buying from someone you don't know, and you want somewhere reliable to find good values on really good gear and a place that's reliable you can count on, Matrix Paintball Gear is that spot. And I always say this, and it's just as true today. He is not paying me to do that. He did do me a favor and send me this gun to review, but he didn't tell me what to say about it. He had no requirements, there was no agreement of what I would say or how that would work or compensation or anything like that. He's just a good guy, reliable, and I would put my personal reputation on recommending him. That's Paul and Matrix Paintball Gear. I'm going to have a logo here somewhere, and I'll put a link below too, so check them out. All right, so initial issues aside, Shocker AMP, let's take a look at it. Comes in the same case the XLS came in. I have no problem with that. In fact, I really like these cases. They're not quite as full featured as the case that come with some other guns, but I like that they're compact. I mean, this thing is like a fraction of the size of a Planet Eclipse case, and frankly, those things are terrible. Those aluminum boxes, I mean, you look at them wrong and they dent. It seems like no matter how much you try to take care of those cases, in like a month, they look terrible. And they're really big compared to what they can hold inside. They're just not great. Well, these are like the opposite of that. Very compact. I can fit 3 of these in my little gun compartment in my bag, which is cool. Other manufacturers should take note. Good solid case design. I've mentioned cases recently in a few of my videos. I really like the MacDev cases, and I really like these as well. They're good solid cases, and also the Force case was good. All right, so your standard stuff. You got a quick start guide. There's no manual in here. I forgot to look. I watched Tim Schafer's video. That's QT Paintball. He mentioned there's no manual up online yet. I'm not sure when he recorded that, so take a look and see if the manual is there. But if it's not now, it will be shortly for sure. But you do get a quick start guide. I'm not going to go through this to take too much time, right? Because you get the same kind of stuff in every gun you buy. But you get O-rings, there's lube in here. I won't even pull it out. One nice thing these do come with is the Allen key set. I haven't looked at this, so I'm hoping I'm not lying. It's a full set. Hey, it is a full set. See that? You get really like a comprehensive set of Allen wrenches here, way more than you need to work on this gun, and that's pretty cool. It's short, which is nice to go in your toolbox. I think that's a pretty thoughtful thing to have a complete set of Allens, and definitely a plus there. The barrel these come with is Freak XL barrel. You get 1 insert. Speaking of the case, like I've complained about with other cases, you've only got a spot for the front and the back. No extra spots for inserts, for your Freak inserts. Not a big deal, because when you buy a kit of these, they come with a case, and there's also aftermarket cases available. A bunch of guys are making 3D cases that are 3D printed cases that are compact. And also, I just got done saying how I like that the case is small. It's not really fair to complain that it doesn't have room for 50 barrels in it, but then it's small. I mean, you can't have it both ways. So, in any case, your standard Freak XL barrel. These have been available for roughly 100 years. and they work great. The Freak system is one of the most economical ways to have a comprehensive set of bore matching backs, or in this case it's inserts in the back, available to you, right? Because it's much less expensive to buy individual inserts as it is to buy complete backs for other barrels, so surely nothing wrong with the barrel. And the gun. Let's put the case away. So, AMP Shocker. They've made some updates. I'm going to put this barrel on and we're going to take a look at it along with the XLS. Ever since this platform came out, when I say platform, this has a new bullet system in it. We're going to talk about that. But when I say platform, I'm talking about the RSX, the XLS, which we have here, and now the AMP. They've all shared this same platform. They look very similar. The ergonomics are nearly identical. And they've made some updates to that sort of design. One thing is the front grip is definitely a bit slimmer. The actual underneath here, where the regulator is a little bit slimmer, but really only marginally compared to the XLS. The big difference is the actual grip, I guess you'd call it the grip, the cover, or the front grip, whatever. The rubber is much thinner, giving the whole thing a smaller profile compared to the XLS is quite a bit fatter. In fact, here, I'll hold them up so you can see, right? Now, I prefer the bigger grip, but that's just a preference thing. Some people like the fact that the smaller trim feel, but when you pull this off and pull this off and hold them up, you can see that the XLS towards the top in particular is wider than the AMP is, but the difference isn't huge. The biggest part of the difference is in the rubber grip. And if you prefer the little bit fatter feel of the grip, the XLS grip will fit on here. It won't look quite as integrated. You can see this top edge matches the contours that are milled in here, or I'm not sure if it's castings or if it's forged or what it is, but whatever it is, this contour here fits on that well. Now, the fact that it is more compact, like I said, I wouldn't make that a criticism really or praise. It's just different. One of the things that I've always liked about this platform is that while it has pretty stretched out ergonomics, if you measure this up against other guns, Planet Eclipse guns, for example, the dimensions as far as front to back, the spacing between the trigger guard and the foregrip, etc., are pretty well matched up. However, because they make the grips themselves so thin and trim and small, it makes the whole gun feel very small and quick. And I've mentioned that in other videos with other guns before. Not always my personal preference, but if that's the feel that you like, they do a great job of it. And making this foregrip more trimmed down than the XLS just contributes to that. So if that's something that you like, that small gun feel, then this, goes another step in that direction, really. Speaking of the grips, there is one positive change they made to these grips, and I didn't bring it out. I was going to take them off, but it's okay. There's a rubber gasket inside of here that seals up the electronics, and will do a better job of keeping water out than previous grips. That's good. Also inside here, by the way, the battery no longer has that annoying wire harness. It has terminals where you just snap the 9-volt in and you don't have to plug the harness onto the battery. So that's a positive. But the grips, apart from the water egress thing, I have to say I think these are the worst grips in paintball. They are very slippery. When you get paint on your hands or sweat on your hands, you can barely hold on to the thing. In fact, my friend Simon, I mentioned, who loaned me that first amp that I had, he resorted. He was there, of course, there at World Cup. It was hot, and even though it's not summer, still hot in Florida and humid. And he had to wrap the whole thing in hockey tape in order to have a chance at holding on to it. This here, hopefully you can hear that. This portion, the whole thing is hard and slippery and not grippy at all. I always laugh at myself for using the word grippy with grips, right? But these are not grippy grips. This portion here is literally hard plastic. And the thing is, they went to the trouble. These are not the same grips as the XLS. They made some changes. You can see that the different contours are slightly different. The way the badge is on there is different. These are new grips. They went to the trouble of redoing them, and they're even worse than the already bad grips on the XLS. Who did that and like saw the result and was like, oh yeah, that's what I'm going for, is a mystery to me how that even happened. There's no place on grips, really on anything that you're going to call a grip for hard plastic. I don't understand that at all. They don't feel good. They have no traction whatsoever, and when you get paint or moisture on your hands, I mean, you can barely hold on to the thing. It's like swinging a golf club in the rain. Good luck, right? And the front is really not any better. It doesn't have any hard plastic on it, but the rubber itself is has this texture that's kind of funny. If you feel the parts that don't have the texture, it feels a little bit softer, but then the texture, when you think of a texture, you're like, oh, they put that on there so you hold on to it better. Well, it actually makes it feel harder. Like, I don't know. In general, the grips, bad. That's all I can say about the grips. They did change the trigger to more of a blade shape. It's a little bit straighter. It does have a little bit of a curve to it, but compared to the XLS, you can see definitely less of a curve there. I like the shape of both of these triggers, and the feel of the trigger is very good. The trigger itself, though, they narrowed it down across this profile and really radiused it a lot, and it makes it feel tiny and weird. I don't really like the way it feels on my fingers, but I don't notice it when I'm playing. I really don't notice it much when I'm shooting. That's one of those things, like I always say, when I'm sitting here sort of pondering what I like and don't like, it's one of the things I don't like. But when I'm using it, that doesn't really seem to be an issue. They have not yet gone to tool-free eye covers, and I've mentioned before, that's not really a huge deal to me. I don't mind using an eye cover or using an Allen wrench to get my eye covers off, but a couple issues. The screws here are not flush. They actually stick out, not an inconsiderate amount, which is just a poor finishing touch, in my opinion, or I guess a lack of a finishing touch. This is a $900 gun, and it shouldn't have Allen heads randomly sticking out of pieces of it. I don't like that at all, for sure. And being the third shot at this platform, like I've mentioned, it's a little suspect to me, frankly. $900 gun, and this is now its third version, still no toolless eye cover. So while as a feature, I don't place a huge amount of importance on that, that just seems lazy to me, and I don't know, suboptimal. But like I said, it doesn't bother me so much not toolless, but the fact that these Allen heads protrude is terrible. And the interesting thing about this, and I didn't think about this till right now, the eye covers on the XLS, and by the way, these aren't the same. You know, you can buy color accent kits for the RSX and XLS guns. Here, I've got this a little too loose. And those are not yet available for these. They're not interchangeable. The sizes and shapes are different. So this is the old platform, and these eye covers are much more nicely finished. They have a raised ridge here in the way the cover is designed, and the screw is completely flush. I can't even feel it with my finger. Much nicer than the brand new, screw protruding. Yeah, that's kind of a mess. Terrible. All right. The feed neck is roughly the same. They did redo something, and I'm going to go back to the XLS for one moment. One thing I liked about the XLS is, and some people actually complain about this, and I think it's a feature, the knob for the clamp is smaller than you see on a lot of other guns. And smaller doesn't always translate to better, right? Rim shot, but when you're trying to turn this under a hopper, sometimes it's hard to get your fingers in there, for me anyway, and get it turned. And the fact that it's smaller actually makes it easier to fit my fingers under there when there's a hopper and turn this, so I like that. And on the amp, they've gone one step farther, and they've moved the knob out a little bit more to make it even easier to grab them. You can really get your fingers around this thing and turn it, even when there's a hopper on. I've tried it, and I like that a lot from a just ease of use perspective. Small touch, but definitely an improvement that I noticed right away. As soon as first time I put a hopper on, I noticed it. So definitely a positive there. Another thing they changed from these guns, if you look at the trigger guard, you can see that they've made the trigger guard smaller at the bottom. They've raised up this angle here to make it parallel to the body here, and gave it a little bit of a sharp edge here. I really like the way this looks, and I like the idea of making more room for your fingers ergonomically. For me personally, I never noticed. I mean, I had to compare these side to side before I even realized they'd changed it. I don't ever feel that extra thing down there, extra angle taking up space where my fingers want to go. I think they're both fine. So yeah, that's a change. I'm not sure I'd call it an upgrade, but it's definitely different. If your fingers were running into that trigger guard and you prefer to have more space, you're going to like that for sure. Here's another change in my opinion, is a negative. The ASA knob they redid. Again, I've got to go back to the XLS. On the XLS, it's a little bit bigger, and the milled relief here has pretty sharp. They're pretty deep and has pretty sharp edges on them. And normally, sharp edges on a part that you're going to touch on a paintball gun is a negative, right? But in the case of an ASA knob, if you're going to use a knob, you better be able to grab it and turn it. And I never have a problem turning these. It can be pouring rain, and no problem. Very easy to grab this, even with gloves on. The grooves here are deep, and the edges of it are sharp. No problem turning this. This thing appears to be designed to be frictionless. Like there's no edges hardly at all on these milled out reliefs. No more sharp edges, and it's sort of machined. You can't see this in the picture, I know. I tried zooming in earlier, but it's sort of a conical shape to match the ASA, the angle, the way the ASA goes like this. So the front of it's actually smaller than that as well. All of those things conspire, like every one of them individually would make it harder to grab, like if you had paint on your hands or if it's raining. And when you put them all together, it makes it very difficult. I tried to turn this, and that wasn't on this one, it was on the other gun, but with wet hands, and I had to dry my hands off. I couldn't grip it to turn the air on my tank with that knob. So not great there. Okay, that covers pretty much everything on the outside. These guns have a new bolt system and a new bolt retention system. And before we get into the actual bolt, I will let you know that pretty much all modern guns nowadays, almost, have a purging ASA, meaning that when you do loosen this knob and purge out the air, you hear tsh, and all the air comes out and you're good. Well, in a step back to who knows how many years ago, over a decade ago, this does not purge. When you undo the ASA, it lets the air out of the ASA, but the gun is still pressurized. You've got to turn this back knob. It's about 1/8 of a turn, and it degasses the bolt. Then you can pull it out. I have no idea why that is. Now, these do have, the frames aren't available yet, but they are engineered. AMP stands for Advanced Modular Platform, and one of their big design goals with this is to make it trivially easy to swap on the mech frame option, which will be coming. It's not out yet, but it will be coming for these. And it's possible that this sort of, the bolt maintaining air charge, and you have to discharge it up here, that may have been something enforced by the design decisions they made in order to make the frame swap simple. I've thought about that some, and I should have asked some of my smart technical friends if that would be the reason. I can't think of a reason why that would be, but there could be a reason for this, but I don't like it. I mean, if you leave it, eventually the air bleeds out over days. I left one charged. It was the other one that I had, but for 3 or 4 days. And when I came back to it, there was no air in it. But it doesn't discharge in like 5 seconds or anything. If you're gonna mess with this, you need to make sure you burp the air out of it and know that it's discharged, so you don't accidentally shoot it because there's still one more ball worth of air or whatever. So I'm not sure why that is, but I don't like it. Okay, in order to take the bolt out, same thing. Once you do that turn and degas, now the bolt is available to remove. And right off the rip, I'm going to tell you about another thing that I don't like about this gun. If you can see this here, when you turn to this blue piece right here, when I do that lock and unlock, you can see how that piece protrudes down, and that's what locks it into the chassis. So in the unlocked position, that piece is up. And when you put the bolt in, you've got to line that up with a groove in the body for it to go all the way in. And I don't mind, that's fine. That part of it's fine. But if you put it in and you accidentally have it offset a little bit this way so it doesn't go, and you need to turn it, if you turn it by the knob, it doesn't turn the bolt. It puts this in the lock position, making it now impossible to put it in no matter where you have it lined up. You have to pull it back out, hold the bolt, turn this back so it's in the unlock position, make sure you find it to be lined up properly, get it in there, and then turn it to lock it. Now, is that like a huge disaster that makes the gun unusable? Of course not. It's just fiddly and annoying, and just everything about this back knob thing, in my opinion, is a bad design. I know why they did it. The push buttons on these had a history of wearing to the point where they could fail, and I'm not sure why they didn't just adjust the materials or tolerances, or I mean, surely there was a way to alleviate that without this sort of Rube Goldberg device where you turn this and a little cam lock thing comes down, and if you accidentally turn it like this, then it won't fit in the body, and you have to pull it back out and turn it again. And, you know, it's just fiddly and weird, and I see no utility for it. But in any case, this is the new AMP drive, and if you're watching other video reviews or reading on Facebook, and I'm not going to take this apart, what I am going to do is direct you again to Tim Schafer's QT Paintball. He just came out with a video recently that breaks down the bolt and explains the similarities between this bolt and the Planet Eclipse Gamma Core, of which this is essentially a direct copy. I mean, when you take it apart, they didn't even go to any effort to make it look different. It's the same bolt. And luckily for us, I mean, as long as it doesn't bother you that you know, they didn't bother engineering anything for themselves. They just took it and put it in this gun. If that doesn't bother you, then that's a good thing, because the Gamma Core is a very reliable, efficient, very quiet and soft feeling bolt. It's arguably the best engine ever designed in a paintball gun. The FL21 in die guns gives it a run for sure. You can probably argue for both, but the Gamma Core is certainly an excellent core, and they did an okay job of copying it, so it works well. Oh, there was one thing I wanted to show. One thing I'm not a fan of with regard to potential paint handling. You can see this bolt is a complete hollow core bolt. I'm not sure if I can pull it out all the way just to be able to see it. Here it comes. You can see there's nothing inside there. It's just a hollow circumference. And when there's nothing in the middle there to hold the ball forward, you're running the risk with smaller paint, especially, of the ball being able to move around in the breech more. And when that happens, that's a bad thing for paint handling. If you had small, very fragile paint, I feel like this may not be as soft on it due to the fact that the ball has more room to wiggle around in the breech compared to, say, the flat-faced, soft-tip bolt in Gamma Core guns. I didn't have any paint handling problems when I shot this. I was shooting not very brittle paint, and it wasn't very cold out when I shot it, so you know, it really wasn't a test for paint handling. That's like a kind of a theoretical thing. So while I've got the bolt out, let's have a look at part of what makes this the AMP, right? The Advanced Modular Platform. And take this apart, have a look at it. So the mech frame, as I mentioned, isn't available yet, but it's certainly coming. And the goal here with their AMP concept was to make it sort of as quick and straightforward as possible to swap the frames, and also just for disassembly for maintenance. And partially they've succeeded. So let's have this apart. There's a screw in the back here, and there is not a screw in the front. The frame hinges down. There's a sort of a hook arrangement in the front, and that's how that comes right apart. You notice no wires. That's very cool. I mentioned, and I think I already mentioned that the 9-volt doesn't have the harness anymore, so that's also cool. The connection between the electronics and the grip and the electronics in here is just this contact pad, so no wires. That's all good. Another part of what makes this the AMP is, if you can see the solenoid, obviously you can see the solenoid. The solenoid here has a little spring clip on the back of it, and the tension pulling backwards this way against this little machined solenoid manifold piece is what holds it in place. There's no screws. The way it comes off is I'm going to hook my finger on the spring clip and fold it back and down, sort of. It hinges down. And now the solenoid is free to be released. You can see. I'm going to put it right back. I don't want to, and you just unplug it off the board. The plug is right here. I don't know if you can see that. I'll do it this way. See, there's a plug right there, and you just unplug it. It comes right off. So I want to put this back in. I don't want to mess with it too much, not being my gun. But here, you know, that's all cool. The issue I have is this. There's a couple issues. One is no screws, right? And there's really no locating boss to hold this up and down. The holes on the back, those are the air ports where air transferred into this manifold, right? There's the holes with O-rings on this manifold, and the solenoid fits in here, and you put it flush against the bottom. In fact, you can hold it with your finger, and then there's a sort of a little raised lip on each side of this manifold that locates it in this direction, and once you get those in, you can fold this up and snap it in place. Now, here's the issue I have. You can lock it in place and not have it be all the way down, so to where those holes will line up. You can. There's nothing stopping you from folding this up, no matter where you are here, and that is an issue in my opinion. You have to make sure. Now, I mean, issue is a strong word, right? I mean, just because you're doing it wrong doesn't mean that the design is bad. I'm saying that if you have screws, you know that it's seated properly because you seat it and screw it down tight and it's screwed down. And you don't have that with this. So let me put this back together. Okay, now here's the other issue I have. You'll notice I mentioned that, you know, this just plugs in right here. Here we can see the eye harness just plugs in here. And then there's, of course, the board that runs underneath this transfer pipe, and those electronics all connect via this contact pad against this contact pad. Is how that all works. Now, we have these wires, and we have the eye wires. And there's no sort of shroud or covering or even wire management of any kind on those wires. And even though we have this, you know, they've paid attention or put an effort in, I should say, to make this some sort of a quickly changeable modular platform, there's nothing in any of this design to stop you from pinching wires in this thing. So when you put it back together, especially the solenoid wire, which you can see is just hanging out here in the breeze. Now, to be fair, there's a pretty big void for this to go into. It's not like it's impossible to fit it in there. However, if you aren't careful and make sure that you sort of bend these wires against the side of the body of the solenoid and below the little black piece that forms the front of the spring clip, if you don't do those things, when you put this together, those wires, and you can see from me fiddling them, the wires are sticking out, and when I push that in there, they're being moved in by the frame. And it's not that it's particularly difficult to get it together without pinching the wires, but they went to this effort for their advanced modular platform to make it simple to operate, so much so that the solenoid is toolless, and yet no effort to manage the wiring harness. And if you bust that off, now the wires do solder on top of the solenoid, so if you're comfortable soldering, if you were to break those wires, you could fix that yourself maybe. If not, you're in for a replacement solenoid. And the thing that's disappointing about that is that in order to manage those wires, all it would take, I mean, I mentioned that there's a pretty large void in the trigger frame. It's not like it's super hard to fit that in there. Plenty of room for some shrink wrap. You could, in fact, if I were to buy one of these, I would probably do that. You could put a big piece of shrink wrap around the solenoid and shrink up that around the solenoid and the wires, right? To hold those wires tight up against the body so that it would easily fit in there without worrying about pinching those. So, yeah, not the best, I guess, effort, I would say, right? Not a great effort for that design. And I've mentioned, you know, we already talked about the bolt with the way the retaining clip fits into the body. I'm going to try to get this in without turning the knob, right? And the eye cover screw. Now we have the wiring on that. The bad grips. I mean, there's a lot about this that, in my opinion, you know, kind of a lack of effort to have to finish it. Like the finishing touches are kind of missing. So yeah, shooting the gun. Now we've got that together. Very soft shot. They've got the operating pressure down on this thing to, I think it's 105 psi, and it feels it. I mean, it does feel softer actually than a Gamma Core shot. If you are after a very soft, pillowy feelings, traditional spoolie shot, this will be right up your alley for sure. And I have spent some time shooting it. In fact, I shot a little bit of a video here to get a look at shooting it and some impressions of it, putting some paint through it. So why don't we take a look at that, and we'll come back and wrap up our thoughts about this. Hey folks, got this AMP Shocker here we're going to do some shooting with. Just came out recently, just before World Cup, and I've shot this. I played, not with this one, but I played some with a different one. Really fun gun to play with. I really love the small and quick feel of it. As far as the size, it's interesting, even though the dimensions as far as how far the grips are apart and such are pretty standard, the very slim and small dimensions of the actual grips themselves on the frame make the gun feel very small. And if you're someone who likes a small feeling gun, you will certainly like the way these feel. So let's take some shots and see what we think about it. So you can hear there, hopefully, the shot of this is very soft. I'm going to try to get closer. I know audio for recording, for shooting, as far as trying to understand what they sound like, is terrible. You can never really tell what it sounds like, but I'm hoping you can tell it's soft, because it is. It has a pretty standard, which is to say not very much, amount of kick. But the actual feel of the shot is very soft, even though I've mentioned how the bolt here is really a Gamma Core copy. I mean, frankly, changes they've made have made it. I love the way the Gamma Core shoots. This shoots softer than the Gamma Core. Very soft feel. Really interesting to shoot. Let me see if I can have it in the frame here. I broke one right out of the barrel there for some reason. Is it loose? No. I'm sure that was just a bad ball. You could tell when it broke. It broke right at the edge. It's not chopping paint, but funny, I mentioned in the video paint handling. I think that's the first time I've ever broken a ball in a video. Now that I mention it, the broken paint is coming out of the very first hole, so we'll find out in a minute where it broke. One thing is that unlike a lot of times I've seen with these spiral pour all-American style barrels, it seems to have cleared out pretty well. Like, I'm still shooting pretty straight. I don't see that very much. My fence post I always talk about, I'm hitting it. I think that's about it. Interesting. Well, we broke a ball, but turn that off. Yeah, AMP Shocker. I really enjoy the feel of how it shoots. It's very soft, like I mentioned. It has very little kick. Really a lot different than the XLS, which precedes it. The XLS has a definite sort of quick and snappy, might not be the right word. It definitely has a pop to it, and I enjoy the shot quality of those as well. These are quite a bit softer. So yeah, AMP Shocker. Okay, so yeah, shooting the gun, as I mentioned, very soft feel to it. The trigger feel very good. I don't have any real problems with the actual operation of this gun. But $900, I mean, honestly, there's too much about this gun I don't like, or that's done better on other guns that are less money, for me to really recommend this gun. So when I get to my whole thing about should you buy one, I mean, I have to say no, frankly, if I'm talking about value. In fact, you know, I just noticed I was taking a look at this, kind of gathering my thoughts in my little break with my shooting video. And there's another thing I don't like about it, is this twist knob actually protrudes around this edge here. It's not machined to match the body. It's just like a little sharp edge here that hangs out. It's just like, I mean, and that sort of like is a little microcosm for a lot about this gun, like that is just not very well thought out. The eye cover screws sticking out. I mean, that's just awful. It's as if someone put the wrong screws in it. Again, is that a deal breaker? Am I gonna lose tournament points because these screws stick out? Of course not. This is not a huge thing that makes the gun inoperable or bad performance. Performance-wise, like I always say, it shoots paint. I don't know about paint handling yet, but I haven't experienced any problems. It has a very soft feel. Velocity consistency, solid. Trigger feels good. I have no problems there. But when we're spending $900 on a paintball gun, there shouldn't be like a laundry list of little sort of foibles that are irritating, in my opinion. For when I'm up in that kind of price range, and I know that in a world of $1,500 CS2 Pros and whatever $1,500 Field 1 Forces and $1,600 M3 Pluses and whatnot, money-wise, it's a mid-range gun. But let's just be honest here. We're talking about toy guns, and it's $900, and it doesn't really do much differently than a $300 gun does as far as performance. So when I'm spending that kind of money, I don't want it to have a bunch of little foibles that irritate me. I want it to be awesome, and this just isn't. The screws are annoying. The grips are terrible. This little edge that sticks out is like just an unfinished sort of bit that I'm not sure what they were even thinking, or they didn't think people would care. It's just a poor touch on that. The fiddly bolt retention system seems like a solution looking for a problem. I don't know what they were going for there. The ASA knob, slippery, right? And the trigger, too narrow. Now, granted, that's a preference thing. Maybe I shouldn't put that on my list, really, because that's really just my personal thing. But all of those other things, like these screws stick out for everybody, not just me. That's not an opinion or like a personal preference, right? I don't think anybody enjoys having screws sticking out the side of their gun, or an annoying retention system, or an ASA knob you can't turn, or grips you can't hold on to. So that's my feeling about what I'm getting if I'm spending $900 on this gun. Now, there's an other side to the coin, though. I'm not trying to be just doomsayer. I've made my feelings clear that I'm really not a huge fan of Shocker Paintball and DLX and GOG as a company, and my feelings about this have nothing to do with that. I'm giving my honest assessment of the gun, and so there's an other side of this coin. If some of these things don't bother you so much, and you are a lover of this platform, right? XL, I'm calling, even though it's a different bolt system, I'm calling it the same platform because, again, I mean, almost identical in ergonomics and shape and weight and size. If you love these and you were really looking forward to an update because one of the things you wanted was a softer shot, because these are a great shot quality in my opinion, but maybe you want something that's not quite so poppy and like a softer feel. This is a very, very soft shot, and if you can look past some of these things, or maybe they don't bother you. Maybe you wear grippy gloves and slippery grips are not an issue for you. And maybe you just don't care about things like the screw sticking out. You just love this shape, you love this platform, and you just really want that softer shot. By all means, the gun does have a very nice feel to it. In fact, I love the way it feels when I shoot it. And like I said, performance-wise, it's completely fine. Excellent performance. So if these things that bother me so much don't bother you, then by all means you should try one. I'm not trying to be just like think up ways to be negative and say, no, don't buy one of these. I'm just saying that from my personal view of what I'm getting for value when I spend $900 on a gun, these issues irk me. I don't like that at all. I feel like a better attention to detail is in order. And certainly, if they ever come up with like an AMP 1.5 or something, I would hope that they would address these issues. Especially the hard plastic on the grips, and just in general poor grips, and these eye covers and the ASA knob. Those three things definitely need attention. I'd love to see updates for. In fact, they wouldn't even need a new gun version, frankly, right? They could just come up with replacements for these things. A new knob that you can hang on to, different eye cover setup with flush screws and replacement grips. And if those three things were done, I think that would be enough to move this into a buy one for me. But in the way it's delivered, you know, for $900, I just don't think these are excusable. I'm reminded of my Control Hopper review, which is kind of the same thing, right? At retail price, that thing is like, I don't remember the number now. It's over $300, or maybe it's just under $300. It's essentially $300 for a paintball hopper. And a ton of people use them and love them. And they do performance-wise, right? They hold paint and they feed it reliably, and that's what you want a hopper to do. But for $300, everything about it should be awesome. And everything about that thing is not awesome. The lids pop open, the button's hard to push to turn it on and off. But whatever, you can watch the review. There's a bunch of little things, sort of like the hopper equivalent of these little things. So, when I'm spending a premium amount of money, I want to get a premium product for that money. And that's the reason that I don't put this gun in my recommended list. Not because it can't shoot paintballs or because the reliability is going to be bad or the feel is bad. None of those things. The performance is good. I really enjoy the way it shoots. And if they take care of these things, I can be convinced for sure. But you should tell me what you think. I know a lot of people were waiting for this gun. A lot of people really like it. A lot of people like the way it looks. And like I've said, if you are a fan of this small, compact, light, quick feeling style of a marker, then there's a lot to like about all of these, this whole line, the AMP, as well as the previous XLS. And real quick, before I go, while we're talking about value, like I just said, if you're one of those people who likes that feel of a small and quick gun, but still like the stretched out ergonomics, you should consider an XLS if you haven't shot one. Because now I'm not a huge fan of these grips either, but they're not as bad as these by any stretch. And none of those things that irritate me about this are present on this gun. You can buy one used for like $500, which is a lot less than $900. The finish is good, no protruding screws, the grips aren't terrible, the trigger feel on these is also very good, still comes with a freak barrel, then the form factor is roughly the same. So if you think that you might be bothered by that same stuff that was bothering me, but you've been thinking, I'd like to try out one of those Shocker Paintball guns that is of this style, find an XLS, excellent gun, with none of those issues and a lot less money. So I appreciate you watching. If you like what you see, I would really appreciate it if you would do the old like and subscribe. It helps me find more people and get information out so folks who are trying to learn about new things that come out can learn. I'm going to have a hopper video coming up here later this week, and I'm going to try to do a New Year's sort of best of, or I'm not even sure. I haven't quite decided if it's going to be best of the year, or I don't know, some kind of a yearly wrap up. We had a lot going on in paintball this year, and we're going to talk about it. I might even do a live thing if I can find more than 5 or 6 people who will participate. But anyway, thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks.